Imagine a world where no one talks about Star Wars. Imagine a world where the biggest pop culture event of the year occurs naturally. Imagine a world where originality reigns supreme. If this sounds idyllic to you, I'm sorry, and if this sounds familiar to you, then you're probably able to remember the years between 1984 and 1995. During that period, pop culture flourished. We had huge hits like Ghostbusters, Batman, Back to the Future, Terminator 2, and Jurassic Park, but no Star Wars. A lot of people don't realize this, but Star Wars disappeared from the public conscious rather quickly after Return of the Jedi. By 1985, the toy line had all but disappeared when the taste for Transformers, He-Man, and eventually Ninja Turtles developed, and other movies that were just as successful were released annually. As we made our way into the 90s, new properties like Power Rangers exploded in popularity, and the superhero made a huge resurgence. Still, no Star Wars. It wasn't until 1991 when Star Wars came back as a novel. Heir to the Empire by Timothy Zahn is credited as bringing interest back to the dead franchise, but a successful novel can only do so much. 4 years later, in 1995, Hasbro/Kenner released the Power of the Force 2 toy line. It was around this time that nostalgia began to kick in and grown men started collecting. It wasn't kids that were really into Star Wars in the 90s, it was the guys that grew up with the originals and pined for their childhoods. The guys that are in their 50s now that love everything that's new. It was also around this time that I got into Star Wars. In the mid-90s, Star Wars wasn't as popular as modern fans would like you to believe. In my class, there were only 2 of us that liked Star Wars. It wasn't a time where you virtue signaled to let everyone know you were down with the Force. You just kinda kept it to yourself because people always ridicule what they don't understand. Let's fast forward to today. Everyone seems to be a huge Star Wars fan. Why? Survey says because it's popular. But it was once even bigger, and it died. And I say it will die again, this time for good. The main reason I don't think Star Wars is untouchable is the way that Disney treats it. Culturally, everything is disposable to us because there will always be more, and we take it for granted. Disney markets Star Wars in the same manner now. There's nothing special about it, and when people tire of it, it will go away. You could argue that it will rise again from the ashes, like before, but here's why I think this time is different. Once the first generation of Star Wars fans die out, and the people who did grow up with Star Wars, the people now, start having kids, they probably won't introduce their children to it, thus creating a smaller fan base generationally. The less people that are exposed to it at the right age, the less diehard fans you will have. If you love Star Wars, think about the feelings you had towards it as a kid. Now imagine the thing you hated most as a kid. Switch your feelings, and understand how people that didn't grow up with Star Wars feel. At its best, it's just a movie. At its worst, it's a franchise that they think is lame. The money is always in the masses, and the masses move on to the next big thing. Star Wars will slowly fade away and never reclaim its glory. And that's it for today's video. What did you think? Do you think Star Wars is going to die again? Do you think Star Wars is forever, just like they used to market it back in the day? The Force is forever. Well, the Force was forever from 77 to 83. 85 is when that toy line died out. But, I don't want Star Wars to die out, but I think it will, because when you had that original generation that loved it, like genuinely loved it, and they grew up in an era where you had one unique thing that was a once-in-a-lifetime event happen to them, they stuck with it. They kept it going forever. They're the kind of people that have the money now to invest in the vintage toys and the old school stuff. They're the ones that pine for the originals on Blu-ray and DVD. They're the ones that really keep Star Wars afloat when it's not at its most popular. And those people are old. They're nearing retirement age. I don't know what everyone's financial situation is, but maybe when you hit retirement, you got to be more conservative with your money. Maybe you want to retire and buy a boat, do other things. Star Wars will take a backseat to those real-life events. And people that are my age, that are into Star Wars, we do love it. But we also grew up in an era where there were other big spectacles. And now there's even more big spectacles, to a point where it's every other weekend coming up in 2018, there will be a film in the caliber of Star Wars. And I'm talking in terms of spectacle. I'm not talking about in terms of financial gain. I'm just talking like Avengers will be just as big as Episode 8, ironically from Disney. But X-Men can be that big. Spider-Man can be that big. There are more tentpole franchises. Star Wars is the tentpole of the tentpole. Or was, I should say. Star Wars was the tentpole of the tentpole. Now, not so much. So, tell me what you think in the comments below. If you found this video and you haven't subscribed to the channel, please do. We got all kinds of great content. We talk about Star Wars quite a bit, but we also have stuff that covers every facet of entertainment. This week on World Class Bullshitters, we got something very special for you guys, so make sure to tune in. And if you're a subscriber to the channel and you really like us and you'd love to see us grow, especially, maybe move into the video format, which we will, head on over to Patreon. $1 a month can get you all kinds of exclusive content. The more there are more tiers, and each tier gets something special and exclusive. So, everyone, thank you for taking the time to watch this today. We'll be back tomorrow where we read some comments on a very famous superhero movie trailer, so you can take a guess on what it's going to be.